Okay.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. Good morning, Beena. Good morning, Beena.
Thank you, Syl. Good morning to you, and good morning to everyone who is watching and who is going to watch later, recorded on YouTube. Uh, and yes, I hope that Grain already joined us, but no, I don't see that, but I'm waiting for that.
There it is.
Hello, it is done. Okay, so
Yes.
now
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello.
everyone. Today's thought. I have been chatting. I was being actually a chatterbox with Sil, and I was like literally blah 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 blah, blah talking too much
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Sometimes, sometimes you need that without any filtration, without being so precise, without being eloquent, trying to
Yeah.
eloquent,
Oh.
trying to say things nicely, precisely, accurately. You just want to say things, not because that you just want to have an ear, so
To
someone else
share. What to share.
just to get more clarity in your own thoughts.
Yeah.
When we say things out loud, it's a magic right there happen because we hear our own words. In my mind, I'm the most eloquent person I could be, which I'm very aware that I'm not. But yes, this is a general idea that people can be like,
Yeah.
oh yes, I
Yeah.
said it because this is the idea I had. Oh, I said it very clearly. But because I was so used to just have things in my mind, and we don't need any adjustments because we are communicating with our own selves only all the time, then we don't need that. And this is very important, to have some people in your life where you can actually communicate your own thought, to realize that where you are not clear, where you are not right, where you are not precise. You might have all wonderful ideas, but they might not make any sense. Having
The
someone who is honest.
opportunity for unclear expression is critical
Exactly.
in a friend. Yeah.
Exactly. And a boon is that if you have someone who is an expert in capital H hearing, who can hear you out even before you say
Yes.
anything,
Yes.
and
Yes.
okay, yes, sometimes that you are trying to
Yes.
say where you are not clear, where you are not accurate, where you are not precise, and he's earnest and he is also honest
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
impeccable. So you can get a right away a feedback. No, sorry, okay, it doesn't make any sense. Okay,
Yeah.
elaborate it
Yeah.
again. He never say that in that. Okay, no, it's not right. No,
Yeah.
no. He says that. Okay, make it clear for me. Say it again. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then that, of course, when you have someone who is honest with you and who is willing to hear, we assume that if someone is honest and telling us that it doesn't make any sense or it is not accurate, we assume that this person don't want to listen, don't want to hear us.
Yeah.
But actually, no, someone who is paying attention will pick every minute detail, and that is the person who is
Yeah.
actually hearing you. That is the person who is actually listening what you are saying, and that is the person who is willing to understand what you are trying to share and who is giving
Yeah.
value.
Yeah.
So that is a boon I have in my life, because I was just chattering and I was saying things about things which I have not experienced in my life personally,
Yeah.
but I do understand. And that is something I'm very
Yeah.
sensitive about, because we assume that if you are not old enough, you don't know what could be the situation in the old age. Sorry, I can understand with the experience of others. I can learn and I can understand. Not 100%, but most of it,
Yeah.
if I am a person. If I've never been to Antarctica, at least I can have some data, and I can have some common sense to understand things. Yes, practical has its own value, of course. Nothing can negate that, but it doesn't make that other person cannot understand that. You don't need to cut wood to have fire all the time. Well, our ancestors was doing that, but now we have stoves, we have burners, we have electric heat, and we can do a lot of things, microwave and other things. We can have that, but it doesn't mean that we cannot understand that how it actually works. So the how the energy is working. So this assumption that okay, if someone we have this understanding very common, that oh, you are a man, you can understand that what woman is going through. Yes, not entirely, because they never experienced that, but it doesn't make that sense that okay, they cannot understand. At some point we all are human, and also that okay, we have some differences, but by the learning, by the willingness to know, by the understanding, by their common sense, they
Yeah.
can understand the things, and they do understand. And same with women. Okay, yes. Oh, you don't know because you're not a man. Yes, we are not, but we can understand because we have
Yeah.
common sense. We have something to share. We at least the foundation is common, mutual. So that's why sometimes people say that okay, you have to go through everything. We don't go through every single bit of experience. We accept from the science also. We accept that. How I know that when I'm turning the switch on, it is going to just allow the electricity to pass through and light the bulb. Because I
Exactly.
know what's going to happen. Someone was being very thorough and doing the work for me.
Yeah.
We accept the idea. And same applies with awareness and learning and growing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that you need to trust, not blindly believing everything, but
Trust without
doing the
trusting.
yes. And this is so important in lives. You don't need to
Yeah.
ask, okay,
Yeah.
a layman can give you a lot of wisdom. Of course, they don't
Yeah.
need to read
Yeah.
and write and all sort of things. The common sense, understanding,
Yeah.
awareness, willingness to learn and grow
Yeah. Yeah.
can do a magic for them. And of
Very
course, you
powerful.
can
Very powerful.
learn from everywhere and anywhere and from out of anything. Sometimes we learn from situation. The situation is not directly connected to us, but we learn how we learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is something I was just thinking about because I have been talking.
Very
That
cool.
today is my talkative day. I'm just talking and talking,
Ah, wonderful.
and I'm
Wonderful.
lucky that I have that
Wonderful.
ear,
Wonderful. Wonderful.
happily
Wonderful.
here, and he
Right.
was
Right.
listening
Right.
and
Right.
he
So
was hearing. Yeah.
look in comments. Beena, look in comments.
Okay. Yes. So that is something I guess I was keen to share with everyone. I'm going there to see the comments.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Uh,
Good morning.
yes.
Good morning. Good morning. Nominus. Yeah.
Oh
Nominus
yes.
means Norma plus Mornus. Right.
Oh, good morning, Norma. Good morning. Okay,
Yes.
good morning.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Also,
Good. Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
hello and welcome to Seamus. If you look there under the heart, I almost never look at that, but I noticed that it said on, I don't know, when I was doing something, I saw, oh, there's 3 people liked or love it, right?
Sorry.
Seamus Gallagher. It doesn't say it here now. I don't know, but anyway. So, hello. I hope you're still listening, Seamus. We're about to get started in a moment here, but actually, I want to do something a little bit different today. So, Norma, are you still here? I hope so, because I'm going to share your post. I'm going to read your post. And I want to bring it up here. I mean, it is a public post, so I don't feel like it's, you know, that I can't share it, but I do want to. Where's the share screen? So I'm going to share your post, Norma.
Okay, I don't see Shamus who you are talking about. Maybe it is
Uh, if you look
closed.
at let's see. Uh, oh, well, it was under the little heart thing there. I saw 3 people was there, and I went there and I saw Seamus's name. Oh, anyway, I don't know. Maybe it went away. I don't know. Anyway,
Okay. Okay.
okay. So I want to share this Norma's post. All right. So are you
Yes.
here, Norma?
I'm listening. Yes, she's here. I can see her. Right. So,
Okay.
but
All right.
I'm on mute. I'm listening. Okay. Please
Okay.
continue.
Okay. Okay. So Norma made this post yesterday, I believe. Yeah. Or this morning early. Is want in inverted commas, is want a friend or enemy or both? Exclamation mark. When we seem to be wanting all the time, we will never be complete. Want assumes something is missing. It tries to hide behind need. We spend so much time with wanting and needing. Maybe try a day without want and celebrate already have, which is usually accompanied with its friends, peace, and contentment. Yes, 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 absolutely so. And my comment here, just as an expansion, as a sharing, right? That's how my comments are. Just is my habit, a repeat back and a takeaway all rolled into one. So for me, I said yes. Wanting is not being complete. Or in other words, not having independence of being. Most excellent, Norma. Now, as a most excellent post. But I wanted to also add to this that I use this term independence of being a lot. And not always, sometimes, what do you mean by independence of being? Well, being free from want. Yes. Now, be very careful here. That's why I wanted to bring this up, because it was in our conversation earlier today between Beena and I. That we must be very careful of not associating and conflating and confusing want and enjoyment. No, two different things. Yes. Simply because I don't want something doesn't mean that I can't enjoy it. Yes. I don't want chocolate right now, but if you were to give me some chocolate, I'm going to enjoy it. See? Very big difference. It's the wanting that's the problem. And particularly, it is wanting inappropriately. It is where wanting is a pressure, a stress, a leverage on you, where wanting is a vulnerability, in other words. This is where it's a problem, yes? But when you don't have wants, but you have plenty enjoyments, now this is independence of being. Yes. I enjoy everything. I don't want anything. This is fantastic space to be. Yes. And it doesn't make you vulnerable. That's why it's independence of being. Because if you have wants, no matter how small or tiny, they can be used against you. You can be leveraged, manipulated, yes, abused, right? Even by yourself, not just by others, right? By the world, by the universe, right? So wants are essentially a corruption, but enjoyment is not, right? So we have to be very careful between wants and enjoyment, right, to make this distinction. So very, very, very powerful, very powerful, very powerful. Oh, you mentioned this about Steve. So, yeah, well, Steve, if you're listening, yes, I do. I go beyond mentoring also. I have actual programs that I have. And if you really pay attention to these lives, there'll be tons of mentoring in these lives. I don't know if Steve is watching or not, but I'll message him and let him know. Because you mentioned that to me in the messenger there, Norma. I'll connect with him and let him know. But I wanted to comment on your post. It's a very important post. And by the way, right, I mean, this understanding of want here, this is a quintessential Buddhism that you're expressing here, Norma, by the way. I'm sure you're aware, but if you're not, this is quintessential Buddhism. The Four Noble Truths are about desire, which is another word for want, or just strong want, right? And how desire, and it expressed in four different ways, causes all the problems. One problem in that, right, that desire is mentioned as a blanket, not appropriate desire. So we have to also be careful with want. There is appropriate want and inappropriate want. Now, when we have appropriate want, it's a deliberate choice that of saying that I am going to work towards the attainment of something. Not that I need to have it, right? But this is something that I believe is desirable. And if I don't have it, the world won't end. So I'm not vulnerable in its wanting, but I am going to work towards it. So now our capital W want, because it's on the bedrock of impeccability. In other words, I'm not wanting things because, well, it's status or approval or, something bailing me out and, in other words, not crappy or indulgent motivations. It's a genuine thing and it comes from the universe and through attunement. Wow. Now it's like, how can I not want what is via attunement? But that's capital W want, right? As opposed to little w want. So we want to make this distinction that there are appropriate wants. And this to me was the big problem with the Four Noble Truths. If they had been presented as inappropriate desire is the cause of all suffering, right? That would change the whole thing. Now, yes, I'm making a bit of editing onto Buddha here, and I said this to a friend of mine, and it just I got scolded quite solidly and roundly. It kind of blew her mind a bit. That how the hell can I be correcting Buddha? Who am I to correct Buddha? Doesn't matter who I am. Once the explanation is there, it doesn't matter whether it comes from me or anywhere. If it makes sense and it adds to what is being said and it fits, if it's self-evidently obvious what I'm saying, that it's valid, well, then yes. Well, because think about it, right? Buddha is telling you to become a Buddha like him. right? Because Buddha's a title, it's an achievement. It's not his name, right? So Buddhism is about becoming a Buddha. Yeah. Now, if this is what the whole thing is saying, that ideally you need to become, isn't that a desire, a want? Well, yes, it's an appropriate want, right? And you need to have a bit of appropriate want in order to be motivated. Otherwise, it's very hard to be motivated, right? In other words, to go somewhere where you are not. Yeah, you need to have some want for change. Otherwise, nothing happens. So we need to understand this, right? Capital W wants are impeccable wants and appropriate wants. And really, when you look at the Four Noble Truths through the lens of inappropriate wants, it changes everything. Because I've known people and know of people and have read much about people who got completely messed up with this idea of eliminating all their wants, because that appropriate wasn't in there. It ruined their lives. They ended up not knowing how to live, because they also killed all progress, all aspiration, right? Any change, and they just stayed where they're at. And not only that, because he didn't really make this distinction between want and enjoy, right? That people stopped enjoying things because they confused wanting with enjoying. And so, they were very earnest in their Buddhism, but they gave it up after a while because they could not make sense of it, and it didn't work for them. They couldn't actually apply it, right? So two things that are really critical here that come from this powerful, brilliant, awesome post of Normus. But just to go that little bit further, to understand that there's small w want and capital W want, right? So in other words, appropriate wants and inappropriate wants. A capital W want is built on impeccability, where you said, this satisfies my integrity. It satisfies my conscience. Yes. This is a right want. This is a moreness want. And this is a want that connects to my spirituality, my growth as an individual, my moreness, the enhancement and development of my awareness. In other words, it has a rightness to it, a capital R rightness, as in appropriateness, rather than little r rightness, which is about morality and all that. No, forget about that stuff. When it's right according to your conscience, this is you and you alone that decides this. Nobody else can decide this, right? But it's also connected to moreness, right? As in your conscience, your spirituality, your evolution, right? How can you not want this? If you don't, you're going to stagnate, right? So there is appropriate want, inappropriate want. It's very important to understand this. Yes, very, very key. And also the second point is not to confuse, to conflate, to mix up and treat them the same. Want and enjoy. Two different things, right? So we want to not have wants that are inappropriate, and we want to enjoy everything as much as possible, right? And when you see the grand scheme of things, and you understand how everything is here for a good reason, everything is here for a good reason. Even the bad stuff is here for a good reason, right? I mean, the worst thing is a good bad example. It's all about pressure on our awareness, forcing us to move, to grow, right? To change. So when we understand this too, we understand that how can I not enjoy everything? Because it's all right, it's all good, it's all necessary, it's all brilliant, it's all awesome. Now, what I'm saying now sounds like a little bit kind of hard to believe. It takes quite a bit of doing to to really believe and feel what I'm saying, and not even as a belief, but to know it. Why? Because you have to go through quite a lot of groundwork to get to that endpoint, right? There's a lot that has to come before that, understanding how awareness works and all of this stuff, right? So this is an endpoint. However, it is an endpoint that can be attained to really see that we actually live in a perfect world. It's perfect as a school, not perfect as a pleasure paradise. Two different things, right? As a school, quite perfect. Unbelievably, brilliantly, awesomely perfect. Just fantastic. Fantastic. And again, if you believe in any kind of moreness, like a deity, how can you not believe it is ideal? Yes. Maybe perfect is the wrong word. Maybe I should say ideal rather, because perfect people have peculiar ideas about perfection. They believe perfection is unattainable. No, it's perfectly attainable, right? Uh, like when I play golf, I make at least 18 strokes, perfect strokes in a round of golf. Typical round of golf is 18 holes, right? When my ball falls into the cup, however I did that, that was the intent, that was the objective, and was perfect. If it succeeded, it was perfect. Yeah. See? So perfection is something that people don't understand because they don't really think about it. But anyway, as an ideal school, it is completely ideal. So very powerful post here, very powerful post that leads to a lot. And that connectivity is very important, right? And like another reason I bring up, Beena mentioned this yesterday about the connectivity of things, power conceptions, right? That we can, like this, right? Want is a conception, and capital W want especially is a power conception, yes. And when you start to connect things, they all connect, right? Like enormous connecting it to already have and connects it to peace and contentment, and I'm further adding it to independence of being, connecting it, right? And putting this greater, and also enjoyment, yes? When I connect it all, you see that greater connectivity and things fall into place. Yes, very powerful, very, very, very powerful. So thank you, Norma, for your most wonderful post. Most wonderful. So I don't know if you heard any of that, Norma. Are you here? You watch the comments, Norma, because I mean, please, Beena, because sometimes for me, I don't always see them. And it seems lately that Facebook, I need to refresh to see. Are there any comments from Norma? Beena, where'd you go?
Yes, I'm listening. I said, okay, I'm going to have my dinner. So I was listening and I'm
Yeah.
having my dinner.
I wrote that, Norma says, I wrote that for all readers, not these. What do you mean, which readers are not, which are not? Like me and Beena? I don't understand, Norma. For all readers. Doesn't all readers include these? I don't know what you mean there. Good. Well, that's why I shared it, because you had written it for all. Yeah. I think maybe you mean the people in the comments. Yeah, I know you wrote it for all. That's why I shared it here, Norma, because this is, as you call it, an open, and I'm going to start using that term, right? It is an open which is also live, right? But to refer to it as an open is more accurate than a live, because you can do a live that's not open, right? And it's when I say an open, it doesn't just mean it's open to anybody, to the public. No, I mean, it's open in terms of being able to share and discuss and talk about anything, right? That's to me an open, right? Anybody is welcome to share whatever is appropriate to share, or what they feel is valid to share. It's open in any way you can think. It's open according to the paradigms as well. It's open to this concept, very importantly so, of there being actual other paradigms they can do. So yeah, I really wanted to share because it's a most marvelous poem, and it's my little bit or not poem or post that I can do to share your marvelous point that you make there, because you say it very nicely and very succinctly. I mean, the concept, like I say, is pure Buddhism, but you expand on it in a way that's more relatable, which is very cool, Beena. Right? And relatability is very important. Very important. If things aren't relatable to people, you can say the same truth in a way that's not relatable, and it just doesn't penetrate. It doesn't get anywhere. So you said it in a very relatable way, which is quite magical. Right? Quite magical. So brilliant, Norma. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you for that. And it's a nice a segue, because this is, of course, when we now get back to the story, this is exactly what is absolutely important to the new nobility. Yes, that independence of being. It's what they are all about. Yes. This independence of being is a huge, huge deal, because, as I've said many times before, without it, we not only lost, but we'll struggle, because we have these vulnerabilities, we have these needs, we have these liabilities, right? Without independence of being, we have liabilities, even relative to ourselves. Yeah. Like we might be a bit shy or nervous or whatever. All of those things come from not being in, competency, all of the stuff, independence of being. Competency doesn't mean that you have to do everything yourself, right? But you need to be at least competent enough to know more or less what's going on, so that you can ask somebody to help you with it. Yes. And if you not have that basic competency to recognize something's not working, well, then you can't ask for help, right? So, but many people don't ask for help because they don't have that independence of being to do so, because they think asking for help makes them vulnerable. Well, if you have independence of being, you're not worried about vulnerability, right? Very, very, very crucial. Very, very, very crucial. I can't emphasize this enough, how important independence of being is. Yes. And again, when you have independence of being, you can't be put out by things like insults and offensive behavior or stuff like that, right? You have independence of being. And again, the horror of the world. I mean, there's a lot of cruelty and meanness and terrible stuff. If you have independence of being, you can be somewhat inured to that. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't care. Of course you care, but they're not going to put you out because you understand it's part of the world, right? So you are not going to be unduly negatively affected. You're going to be duly negatively affected, yes, but not unduly, right? So independence of being is about the ability to be appropriate with your connections, your reactions, your responses to the whole world, right? To everything, all the positive and the negative. But if we don't have independence of being, the negativity of the world can destroy us. It really can. Lead you into depression, lead you into hopelessness, lead you into misery, lead you into sadness. All of that negative stuff comes because we don't have the independence of being. They are facts of the world. We cannot undo this understanding that these things are facts of the world. So at some point, we have to make some kind of peace with it, or some kind of accord, some measure of appropriate acceptance, which doesn't mean I don't care, which a lot of people think this means, right? If you're not going to be affected with it, you don't care. No, I can care and not be unduly affected, not put out, not end up in depression. I can care very much and still not end up in depression. I can care very much about the negativity and suffering in the world and also be very joyful. Yes. The lesson from the cheerfulness, right? If you've ever hung around hospitals, you'll know this, that, you've seen a cheerful nurse at some point, right? They're always cheerful. Doesn't matter that people are suffering around them, the patients, and they're moaning and complaining and bitching at the nurse and being horrid to the nurse, because people in pain can be very mean and horrible sometimes, by the way. Doesn't matter to the cheerful nurse. Does she care any less than the stern, strict nurse? No. Or the angry nurse? No. She cares just as much, but she's always cheerful. And this is a massive boon to the patient. That cheerful nurse is the most fantastic thing ever, right? Make a difference. So when we think of this in the context of suffering, and we think that the way to deal with it, especially suffering that we can't do things, is to have positivity and love and moreness and joy. We're putting this out. This is a way to negate and combat the suffering. This is what you as the individual can do. Because people always say, yeah, but what can I do? That's what you can do. You can be positive. You can be loving. You can push out that joy. You can be joyful. Yes. And you can share this moreness, right? Because the moreness then starts to be somewhat of a balance to the lessness, right? So it's a lot that you as the individual can do. It's a lot. Be positive, be more, have independence of being. Yes. So that through the independence of being, you are able to be this radiant bubble of moreness, right? Think of an angel. Think of an angel. Don't you think an angel would be a being that is joy, is the essential element? That's what makes them shine, is the joy, the love, the moreness. Yeah? Now, does that mean the angel doesn't care about suffering? No, that's their whole job, is to deal with suffering. But they are still not going to lose that joyfulness, that love, that moreness. That is what makes them shine. See? Very powerful way of thinking, and it goes against our superiority paradigm habits of thinking and being. We've been trained to be elsewise, and doesn't make sense when you really think it through, right? Very, very powerful. Very, very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. All right. So on that magical moreness point, any comments, Norma? Any comments, Beena, before we start reading?
No, please do continue reading, because this is some very satisfactory kind of discussion. Okay, I can't say
Yeah.
discussion because you were sharing, but very satisfactory discussion
Yeah.
about the
Thank
post,
you.
and
Thank you.
that was a wonderful post.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're still on Biella, with the assistance of Illumina, is explaining why that the whole interaction with Boynal is so significant beyond just being a minor mystery of oddity. Why, there's a great mystery involved here, a big deal mystery, right? As I see it, I would agree, nothing inherently magical about it. The oddities and inexplicabilities of Boynal message. But, and this is a big but, if we consider what our theme of the day is, what we had focused on our intent on earlier, our theme of anomalies, and also the inordinate, yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah. Our theme of anomalies and the inordinate made manifest, it would seem from that context we have been gifted with a big anomaly. Yes, right. It may not be so in and of itself, but what are the chances that while focusing on a theme about anomalies, we get presented with such a doozy? Yes, said Ursula. That's the odds compound. Ursula understands statistics, right? And like I said yesterday too, when you have something that is truly exceptional, statistically, like wildly improbable, right? That happens. But when you have two wildly improbable things, the statistics compound. And like, let's say it was a 1 in a billion chance. Two 1 in a billion chances happening at the same time make it not 1 in 2 billion, but 1 in like 1 trillion or 10 trillion or whatever, right? It goes crazy. And when you start having three, four, five, the statistics go off the charts. I mean, completely. They go into insane numbers, right? Right. So this is very important, says Ursula. Yes, the odds compound. Unless, of course, over the time span of a morning, usual happenings of this nature are fairly commonplace. So she's covering herself here, right? And not in a negative way, but in a very appropriate, thorough, impeccable way. She's saying that if this typically happened, then the odds would not be compounding and this wouldn't be so unusual, right? Well, then, okay, this is something that normally happens, so, or at least happens every now and then, so it's not such a big anomaly. But, right, but she smiles here, right? Joined by, but that is not the case. The magnitude of the oddity is extremely rare. Yes, she checks. You see, she makes a statement, but she checks it. She's already learning from Biella and the aspirants, right? That this is what they do. They never, when something is very clear like this to her, which is like a duh, she still checks, right? Because this is that humility. You never take your certainties as being absolute. It's very, very key, that humility. No problem, Norma. No problem. See you later, maybe. Or, we'll talk about it later. So no problem. Never a problem, Norma. Never a problem, Norma. Always good. Always good. It's always a bonus to have you here, no matter for how long it is. Right? Themes of the day, I am suspecting, range over many, many subjects. It's not as if every day has a theme of the day which is about anomalies. If that were the case, whenever a huge oddity occurs, it would coincide. Ursula was doing a great job of thinking it through out loud. Biella and Illumina beamed at her. So from a purely statistical perspective, it is highly unusual. Is my perspective reasonable? Ursula checked to make sure. Yes, thank you, Ursula. Nicely summarized. We do indeed have ourselves a juicy anomaly. The value of it in the context of our theme of the day is in recognizing anomalies, how to deal with them, placing them in context, connecting them to our intent. Some anomalies can be figured out on the spot. Those typically are symbolic and metaphoric. Others take a little longer, a reason and logic puzzle, or a spiritual puzzle. There's many, many reasons. So I need to attribute this here. Otherwise, it's not clear who's saying yes here, Biella or Illumina. Yes, right? Uh, there we go. Others seem to happen purely as an alert, something to carry around with us. And when the time comes, it connects. So this is a very important part here. Here is Biella elucidating and explaining and making clear just how anomalies are connected to. She's basically giving a little mini course on the language of anomalies, right? It's very key. So first she says, some are symbolic and metaphoric, others are reason and logic by others. Others seem to happen purely as an alert, just to make you aware. Pay attention, something's about to happen, something to carry around with us. And when the time comes, it connects, right? Where you hold this anomaly in your mind and you're paying attention. I don't know, what does it mean? I see now what it is. And because you were alert, you noticed something that you wouldn't otherwise have noticed, because you had this intent and alertness to what does this anomaly mean? It's connected to something, right? So very powerful as an alert, right? Then that memory of the anomaly alerts us that something special is happening. Anomalies are called that because they are truly anomalous. There is not really a pattern, more or less, yes, but each one has its own idiosyncrasies. That is because they are connected via many, many threads to the greater flow. So it is a very particular connectivity. That's why you can't have, say, anomalies have this meaning or that meaning. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd, because it's every time the universe has changed and everything is different, it's always unique and always individual. There might be similarities, yes, but to say it means this is an arrogance that's just preposterous, right? And that's why the old omen system fell out of favor, because there was this insistence that it does mean this every single time. And of course it doesn't. And so, well, then it falls apart, right? When you start to use something and it doesn't have value, it starts to fall into disuse. Yeah. And that's just the human nature. There's a dearness too. It's like obvious, right? If it's not going to work, they're going to fall out of favor. Right. So it was very powerful in the beginning until people started to try and codify it and make it precise and exact. And this is the difference between a definition and a conception. Yes. When Biella is sharing the conceptions relating to anomalies, like for instance, anomalies is an alert, or it's showing a pattern, or it's a puzzle for your reason and your logic, or whatever, right? A suggestion. But those are all abstract, and because they're abstract, they connect to everything else, and they don't define it, they don't lock it down, they don't close it by this wanting this tightness of definition. Many people desire that because they want easy answers. They want to, oh, I got an anomaly, I can go look in my book and say, oh, it means this. What are you doing? You're avoiding thinking. And if you avoid thinking and making an effort to figure things out, the universe is not going to reward you. You're going to have a hard time of it. Tell you that now already, right? This does not work. It does not work. Yeah. You might get some short-term benefit, but longer term, no, because you are making yourself vulnerable to whatever that those definitions are. And when they don't supply what you need, then you lost, because now you've trained yourself. All that time you spent looking up in the book and relying on this, you've lost time learning how to have independence of being, how to figure things out for yourself, etc. Yeah. So really, really, really bad, right? It's like when you look up the answers for math questions and you never learn to do the math yourself, right? When you don't have the calculator, you're lost. See? Got to be able to do it without the calculator. Yeah. Right. So it's the same thing in the abstract to apply. Abstract thinking, very powerful. That is because, but each one has its own idiosyncrasies. That is because they are connected via many, many threads to the greater flow, to our personal flows, and to the multi-threaded connections between us, and to the multi-threaded connections between us, the universe, and our intent. So anomalies are, yes, okay, language of the world, messages from the beyond, messages from Moreness, messages from God, language of God, whatever you want to call it, right? Or Allah or Buddha, etc. Right? But you have to understand that there is a multi-threaded connection between us, the universe, and the intent. Not just a single thread, but multi-threaded. But we have three things involved now with multi-threads, right? So think of three like puppets. But instead of the puppets being connected to strings that are connecting them from above, the strings of the three puppets, think my face as one puppet, right? And I've got strings going to my face, then from there to this puppet, from this puppet to this puppet, from this puppet to me, from right? A lot of strings interconnecting this. It's complicated, yes. So when we understand this, and each time right? As things move and flow, right, in the timeline, like when you're playing a video of these things interacting, right, you see the threads move and change. And if you stop that video of these three things interacting, at any point in time, when you take a screenshot of that video, it's going to be different to every single other time, right? Because each time is unique because there's evolution, change, right? The pattern of the strings and interconnections are always going to be different because there's lots of stuff going on and changing, right? Even just time, it changes it. So it's never, ever going to be the same. That's why anomalies don't repeat. Yes. They may have a similar theme or something, abstract symbolicness and all that, but the absolute preciseness of it cannot be repetitive, right? Unless you're being really stupid and you're not getting the message. But then you just have to remember your original anomaly. So maybe they will repeat in somewhat similar way, but exactly, no, never. Illumina again smacked her one hand onto the other in that peculiar way of hers. Bam! She goes. And, she said with emphasis, and what is the one thing common between all anomalies? She demanded, directing her thrust at the aspirants. Illumina had a powerful, fun way of communicating with the aspirants. She pushed them constantly. It made for much joy. Right? So Illumina comes and connects, interacts with the aspirants in a very different way to Biella. Biella, it's all about interaction, communication, discussion, and discernment, thinking it through to the end, perspective shifting, right? And she kind of leaves the effort of getting there up to the person themselves. But Illumina, she feels, you know what? Sometimes we need a bit of a push, yes, and well, she takes this from the universe. Like sometimes force of circumstance is exactly that, where we need a bit of a push or a bit of a suggestion, right? So this, how she is acting here now, is her kind of deliberately being a bit of force of circumstance, right? Where she says, you know, come, share, push, whatever, right? And she pushed them constantly. It made for much fun, but she does it in a very fun way, um, because she has a different personality to Biella, right? So it's something that, you know, it's just that idiosyncrasy, uniqueness for her. Very cool. I like this. I like that, you know, because they have the same underlying core principles of character, doesn't mean they can't have individual personalities. Absolutely not, right? We have to understand the difference. Yeah? I mean, personalities are like clothing. Think of it that way. I wear different clothing all the time, but yet there's sort of more or less of a theme and a style that I have, right? Okay, I might change that every now and then, but still, yeah, this is the same way with personalities. Yeah? It made for much joy. Awareness, Mum said in that flat way of his, completely deflating the energy Illumina had built. And her mum is a bit unaware of how this flat way of his is, because he's an alien. You know, he doesn't mean to be flat. It just kind of happens to be the way he is. And of course, they love it. You know, they love Mumt as well, right? Illumina zoomed in on him and with an outstretched crooked finger asked, yeah, this this a finger of emphasis, right? It's like she doesn't point straight at you. It's always a bit crooked like this, right? It's like emphasizing with this crooked finger. It's too funny. Actually know somebody who does this. That's where I took it from, right? So anyway, yes, but what about awareness? Her finger of emphasis was famous. Like, you know, don't be resisting Illumina when she's on a vibe and on a mood. Yeah, I mean, it's not negative. She's not a bully. It's just magical appropriate. Of course, you could if you really wanted to, but it's a gift. It's a gift of energy, right? This emphasis. And yes, she's pushing you a bit. And you may be a bit tired, you know. All right, but take that gift. It's going to like spark you up a little bit. Because if you sort of buy into the magic of this, right? And you're allowing yourself to be immersed in the moreness of it. You see it as a gift. And so it will pull you out of your low energy or your reluctance or your just bubble that you're in, right? Very powerful, very powerful. Kaljun came to her mump's rescue. I mean, not really a rescue, but it's just fun, right? They're just having fun. It's a bit of histrionics. It makes for the sharing and communication and learning, just adding a different style to it, right? Look at Coffee Noble. He has a whole different style. I mean, he basically tells you what's going on, right? That's it. You just But you go with it, right? It's all different. It's all the same underlying intent is there. That goodness of intent, that moreness intent, right? When you understand the intent is pure, it's always easy to go with these things. Not a problem, right? Very powerful. Kaljun came to her mum's rescue. The anomalies are always about aiding us in enhancing our awareness or developing it in some way, he said. Being careful to include all the necessary elements, right? Because uh, Illumina demanded, right? If we go back to what did she demanded? What is the one thing common between all anomalies? And the mom says, awareness. Yeah, but what about awareness? The about is, yes, the common thing between all anomalies is that they are about aiding us in enhancing our awareness or developing in some way. Now, Carl June, Illumina, if it hadn't been in this environment with the delegates, she may have kind of said, yes, but what specifically about the enhancing or developing? He may have been a bit stuck. He didn't emphasize aiding or assisting. Yes. He emphasized enhancing. Yes. But he didn't also emphasize aiding. Yes. So anomalies are about aiding us in the enhancing and developing of our awareness. Right. So aiding has to be very, very cool here. It's not a telling of you, it's an assisting. Can't tell you. It'll rob you of your awareness and be a program. So aiding or assisting, very, very, very crucial, this point here. So now she didn't kind of, scold him. She's not really scolding, but she didn't like pounce on him and say, yeah, but what else? And give him the finger of emphasis. But he could easily have got it. But in the circumstance here, it wouldn't have been appropriate, right? Because the delegates are there now. Yes, Illumina exclaimed excited, as if this was the first time she was hearing this. Now, again, it's one of those seemingly simple little lines that just seem to be filling out the circumstance. But this is actually part of new nobility philosophy. Yes. When you get involved, not just philosophy, but practice, Beena, you know this. When you engage in capital H hearing, yes, and you have that full receptivity, yes, that when you
Yeah.
set aside all your knowing, all your history, yes, when you set all that
Yeah.
aside and you open to this being moreness, you hear it as if you're hearing it for the first time. And when it's profound, of course, you're going to get excited again. Yeah, right, Beena?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah,
Oh yes.
yeah. I mean,
All
this is a
all the time.
huge deal. It's a huge deal.
Oh
And
yeah.
also, it makes life magical. We go over the same thing so many times, and it makes no difference. Right? Because, like when we did Way-of-Impeccability, or at least now we don't have that many participants right now. So we're not doing it as much with joint sessions. But at one time, we had a whole bunch, right? All at the same time. And sometimes they would come on
Yes.
together. But nonetheless, Beena was coming on while I was doing the interactions with them, the go overs, and listening to their repeat backs and takeaways and sharing moreness and all this, right? The elaboration and extension of it.
Yes.
But we would be going over the same material because each participant, they're starting off with the same content, and then they give us repeat backs and takeaways and sharing how they're implementing it, how they're practicing it, how it's affected their lives,
Yeah.
what when they thought it through to the end and perspective on it, shifted it on it, what moreness came. I mean, like Erica with capital T Trust, I call her the Titan of Trust. We went for weeks or even months of her sharing how much this concept of capital T trust and the application of it, how profoundly life changing it was, right? And we would go over this in different ways and all that. But everybody else also had that same capital T trust, right? But it's a tool, of course, they got applied. But it didn't
Yes.
impact them as much. Maybe something else like clarity of intent really grabbed them, right? Everybody's different. But nonetheless, we'd go over the same material with everyone, and it was always like it was new every time, right, Beena? Now, profoundness
Oh
never gets.
yes. And sometimes consecutive
Yeah,
4 sessions, like 8 hours, and they are coming and they are sharing, and
yeah,
most of the
yeah,
time the sharing
yeah,
is of
yeah,
course
yeah,
repetitive,
yeah,
because one was saying something about in a different way, but the other person is coming and sharing the same thing but in a different way. But of course, it is like the same thing. And because most people was just, okay, going through the same time. But everybody has its own vocabulary. Everybody has its own connectivity. Capital C
Yeah,
connectivity with things. Every single time when they connect with something, some else, like okay, with other concepts in way
yeah,
of impeccability. I'm like, wow, okay,
yeah,
so the trust is also connected with clarity of intent. Oh wow, okay, so the trust is also
exactly.
connected with impeccability.
Exactly. That
Whatsoever.
capital C connectedness, that
Oh,
was
so
magical to
yes, all
observe.
the time. Okay,
Yeah,
yes, it can be very okay repetitive,
yeah,
but always new.
yeah, yeah,
Always new.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Always it's magic. Now look what I was saying about the Lumineer and Carl June's comment about aiding, right? I'd forgotten this was coming, right? I just was extrapolating just from the content, like, well, this is kind of a duh. But and I just read the sentence, right? Yeah, and I didn't read further. Let's read further. Yes, Illumine exclaimed excited, as if this was the first time she was hearing this. Yes, this was the very first time she was hearing this. Yes, we must not forget that. Anomalies are an aid, she emphasized. Not necessarily an answer, but always an aid to enhancing and developing our awareness. So yes, she does what popped up in my mind as something that, all right, now she doesn't do it with a finger of emphasis to Carlton specifically. She emphasizes it to everybody because it's more appropriate, right? But if they were in that small group, she might have singled him out a little bit and say, hey, to stimulate and prompt to say, like all of them, oh, yeah, I've got to think a bit further. I've got to put it all in, right? It's just a motivational mechanism. But this is very powerful. Illumina gestured to Biella for a round out conclusion. We always have to figure it out for ourselves in the end. Biella completed with energy and feeling. I didn't actually read that with energy and feeling, so let's do that again. We always have to figure it out for ourselves in the end. Biella completed with energy and feeling. Very important point. Right? In the end, we always have to figure it out for ourselves. Very important. So I added, did you see, Beena? I added another fine quote. Profoundness never gets old. Yeah,
Oh yes.
it doesn't. You can do it over and over. Same with the sublime. Moreness. You can never get enough. Never gets old. Biella moved back inside, wanting to send Boynal a message to let him know he had become part of the theme of the day. Now look at the little star here, right? That is, it indicates in writing a little bit of time lapse. Now, that's very hard to communicate in audio, by the way. That little star, it says a lot, but how do you say this in an audio recording? Yeah. Do you say time passes, right? Or break in some way? Well, okay. Biella moved back
You were
inside,
breaking,
wanting.
so
Say again, Bina.
you were breaking, so please say it again.
Oh, I said the little star here, right? Or the
Yes,
asterisks.
yes,
In
yes,
writing convention, it indicates there's some break, a shift, not just in time,
yes.
but in kind of mood or atmosphere, some sort of a shift of some kind, right? Because Biella left that point there, right? This whole point that Biella brought up and anomalies, it's a lot to process and think about, right? So that shift there indicates that okay, this is the end of this particular focus of the discussion, right? And we're moving on to something else. Now, even though the time Biella moved back inside, there's not a break in time, but there's a shift from an intensity and attention point of view, right? That her moving back inside gives time to reflect and process and integrate, incorporate what has been shared. Right? It's very important. It's very important
Mm.
that you do this, and this is part of Biella. Like you'll see them if you observe the new nobility. They'll be chatting, and all of a sudden, like everything's going wonderful, and they'll just they'll get up and disperse. Yeah, because they've realized they've come to an asterisk. Yes, in the discussion, right? In the greater story. They're acutely aware of this, so they won't keep discussing on stuff because then your energy goes to the next thing and you've forgotten the key points of what came before, right? Just the way attention works. I'm very key on this. And readers and authors know this as well, right? You can't keep on the same point forever. You have to make that shift and give a space and a break and a change. She does this by moving back inside. Well, she also wants to send Boynal a message, but there's a moreness to it, right? And she doesn't say, "Oh, I want to go," uh, right? Because if she says that, by implication, the rest can still do the ongoingness, right? But she knows that if she moves inside, she's going to break up the discussion there, and they recognize it, and they say, "Okay, change, shift," right? So there's subtle stuff, but very powerful. Biella moved back inside, wanting to send Boynal a message to let him know he had become part of the theme of the day and how he was now part of the morning story. Yeah, not only the morning story, but the greater story. Yeah. Sending the messages, she filled him in on what they had discussed about anomalies. She did not elaborate on the part about his anomalous comments and the mystery of that message at the end. She felt there was a genuine conversation in progress which had not come to resolution yet. So she's filling in this part here where she's talking about all anomalies have the idiosyncrasies. They're connected to the great flows, and they come about, via sometimes they symbols and metaphors. Sometimes they are puzzles for our reason and logic, and all of these details. Right? She shares that with Boynal because that's very important for him to know, like what exactly is an anomaly. Right? Yeah, he's never gotten to that point yet. Right? Sending the messages, she filled him in on what they had discussed about the anomaly. She did not elaborate on the part about his anomalous comments and the mystery of that message at the end. She felt that there was a genuine conversation in progress, which had not come to a resolution yet. Biella hoped Boynal would respond so they could continue. She felt strongly he didn't quite grasp what she meant with anomalies. A further conversation would tie into her greater theme as it connected to the theme of the day. And her greater theme is the inordinate made manifest. Right? That's her greater theme of the day, anomalies. So this greater theme is a big deal. And the greater story, like if you say it from an author's point of view, yes, we've got the story about the new nobles and Biella sharing with the delegates and all this, right? That's the sort of ordinary story. But in the greater story of the series, where is it going? Right? Okay, you end the story. If it ends here, this chapter, and it's the last chapter, then what? Right? You need a greater story to tie it all together. That greater story is this particular mystery now that is implied by Boynal's comments. Now, it'll come clearer later, but anyway, I'm just saying, just as it pops up in my head. You see, this is the same process. When I read, it's the same process as when I write it. I write something, and then from that follows the next, and from that follows the next. And so when I read this, the same stuff comes up into my mind now as when I was writing it. Very interesting. Biella hoped Boynal would respond. A further conversation, excuse me, would tie into her greater theme as it connected to the theme of the day. Eventually, everyone drifted back inside. No, dang it now. Come on, sneezes, man. I thought I was rid of this now. Ay, dang it. Biella responded to the interest. I was thinking about what I had been asked to do. This is in the morning before they came, right? I had been asked to show what the new nobility are. I was thinking before you came about what I had been asked to do. I had been asked to show what the new nobility are. I had been asked to show what it is to be a new noble. Those two sentences. To show what the new nobility are and to show what it is to be a new noble. There's a slight difference between the two, right? Because what the new nobility are is the greaterness of the society, right? Let's show what the new nobility are, to demonstrate their greater society, right? And their culture, in other words, their philosophy, their intent, their purpose, or their moreness, right? That's to show what the new nobility are as a group. But then it is to show what it is to be a new noble. Now you are coming to the more specifics, right? In other words, you're going to show what it is that is common between new nobles. Yes, right? Like the caring and the consideration and the patience that all she showed with Boynal. That's showing what it is to be a new noble, right? To take that depth of interest and to further on it, right? So the two are slightly different, but very important. And she says it here. I was asked in those terms. Yes. I think I must add this to my quote file, actually. I mean, it's a bit of a peculiar quote, but it's very, very, very significant and important, right? So even on its own, just this now. Hey, not noble. No nobles. Yeah, I know. Very, very significant, right? I mean, when you read it as a quote, uh, when you let me go back to the quote here, right, Beena? When we see this as a quote, it takes on a very different significance, right? If you just see it out of context of the story, right? Like in this, in a book of quotes from the Biella series, right? Or just quotes by the young man or whatever. Right? I have been asked to show what the new nobility are. I have been asked to show what it is to be a new noble, Biella noble.
Yes.
When you say this as a quote, by implication, there's a deep significance to it, yes? Because
Yes.
it's been pulled out
Yes.
as a quote. And it changes your perception of the statement. Of course, this is incredibly significant to Beena, to Biella, right? Very
Yes.
big deal. Very big deal. All right. So that's why I pulled it as a quote there. I was asked in those terms. These requests have had a profound effect on me. They have profoundly leveraged my intent. Leveraged in, uh, I would actually even emphasize this. They have profoundly leveraged my intent. The aim of every new noble is to continually be noble, to live nobly, to exemplify that as much as they can. It's how we learn from each other. That's absolutely a capital L learn. That can even be emphasized, right? That's why reading is so important, right? It's how we learn from each other. It's emphasized, but not quite as strongly. But showing, see, when it's italicized, there's an extra emphasis to the capital L emphasis. But showing that is somewhat of a different experience altogether. Altogether, it requires me to be proactive. Proactive within my response and connection to the greater flow, and in connection to my personal flow. Right now, in other words, right, to unpack this, maybe it's obvious, but I'm unpacking it anyway because it makes it more clear for me also, right? Which is what this does, right? Continually get more clarity on the things that you're already clear about. It's very useful, right? That's how you acquire expertise. Right. Now, so she says it requires me to be proactive with my response and connection to the greater flow. When you're living in attunement, you are continually responding, right? Unless the attunement says do this, right? Then in the doing of what you were told to do, yes, you are responding to being told to do this. That's your response. Yeah. But in the actual doing, you have to initiate and right and be proactive, in other words. Yeah. See the difference, Beena? When you're continually living in attunement, you are almost always responding. You're taking your cues from the universe and you're responding as appropriate. Yeah. Unless you get
Yes.
specifically your response is to something that you are being directed to do specifically. See, like she was directed specifically to
Yes.
show, to show. Yeah. So now she has to initiate
Yes.
showing. She can't respond. Yes,
Yes.
she will. The appropriateness of the situation, that attunement will guide her as to when it's appropriate to show what. Like for instance, she couldn't really show capital H hearing with just talking to the delegates while walking around Nobelia. Right? It wasn't appropriate. Yeah. Maybe when it came to Camelius, it was appropriate, but well, it was to him, but only he was seeing it then. When he was so in his bubble, he wouldn't see it as capital H hearing. However, in this group environment with Boynal coming that message right as they knocked on the door, right? Now the attunement is saying here is where you can initiate capital H hearing. See? Be proactive. Right? It's subtle, but it's very
Yes.
powerful. It's very important, right? It's very important. So there she did, right? Because otherwise, if some other thing, if they hadn't come at the same time, she would have just taken Boynal's message and said, "Hey, I've got guests and visitors," and she wouldn't even have responded right away because he's not expecting a response right away. She would have just left it and come back to it, later in the day or in the evening, even, or the next day, even, right? I mean, when it comes to text messages, you're not obliged to respond immediately, right? Or emails, right? You can reply later. So, but now she does, and she does engage what she knows is going to take time, right? But she's doing it because it shows what it is to be a new noble. And it also shows what the new nobility are. They are caring beings. They are exceptionally considerate, right? And they are exceptionally sophisticated. And they do things that seem ordinary, but are not ordinary at all. Like in this case, the ordinary thing is she's responding to a comment over the like a text message. But what she does in between and how she makes space and all of the things that we mentioned as we went through this, all the capitalized theory, those are not ordinary at all. So even though they appear to be doing something ordinary, actually they're not, right? There's always more, right? This layeredness to their behavior. The showing leads me to courses of action I would not usually engage in. Right? In other words, she wouldn't usually engage in making her capital H hearing something that she's sharing with others because, well, it's her doing it, and they may not have the interest in that, right? So to sort of put it onto them, especially your guests, this would, under normal circumstances, be somewhat inappropriate, yes? Because you're kind of forcing them to go where
Yeah.
you are. But in this context, it is appropriate, and she can do it, right? So it leads me to courses of action I would not normally engage in. And of course, with the theme of the day and in order to make manifest, she cannot do it otherwise. She has to, living in attunement, she has to do this, right? Very powerful. Normally, I would let things happen as they do. Yeah. Respond as appropriate. Showing, however, must be emphasized, showing here. Showing, however, has set me to initiate what I might not otherwise set in motion or expand upon. She's saying the same thing again, right? Because again, she's exploring this as it comes. Biella pointed to the com. The conversation with Boynal is a great example. Besides the anomalous aspect of it, I wish to illustrate, to show how it fits into the greater long-term picture. This is very, very, very important, right? To make the delegates and the aspirants acutely aware that a new noble's perspective isn't only always to take the thing in the appropriateness of the now, but to look at how it fits into the appropriateness of always. Yeah, very key. Bigger picture, right? Very longer term, right? That's always now, right? One of the major aspects of the new nobility is their presence on other worlds. Now she's going in a moreness direction, which I'd kind of forgotten about, which is very cool. Most new nobles do not stay on Nobelia. As wonderful as it is, actually, I need to emphasize that not as well, right? Because you would expect them to, right? And she's saying, because if you don't emphasize this, by the way, just from a communication point of view, right? Most new nobles stay on Nobelia. That's what when most new nobles stay and Nobelia, you take those key words, right? When people are listening, you take keywords and you put them together, right? So when you have those four words, new nobles stay nobilia, right? And you would ask the average person, look, let's say you make it into a fragmented sentence, right? Where you take this out and you just put like dot dot dot, like it's broken up, right? Like if you said, I got this transmission and I just heard these four words. New nobles stay nobilia. What do you think it means? The average person would say, well, most new nobles stay on nobilia, duh. Right? Beena, are you with me? Oh, Beena may be eating.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. But you see what I mean by implication, right? So I'm
Yes.
commenting on why I italicized not, because Biella will be
Yes.
aware that when you're listening, you hear what you expect to hear. So if she just says it in a regular sentence, most new nobles do not stay on Nobelia. You might just hear new nobles stay Nobelia, the key words. Put them together, and you've got most new nobles stay on Nobelia. This is what you expect. But when she emphasizes not, she's saying, oh, wait a second, there's an emphasis on not. That means break your expectations, right? So most new nobles do not stay on Nobelia. Significant fact that you weren't necessarily aware of. So the emphasis, very, very, very important there, right? You see from a communication point of view, right? Pure communication skills, yeah?
Yes.
Right? When you realize she's communicating because she understands typical human psychology, the psychology of expectations, the psychology of hearing what you expect to hear, etc. Right? Now, Ursula would have heard it with the unemphasized not, because Ursula is in that acute observer mode, right? And she's hearing everything like it's new and fresh. So she's hearing without expectations, right? She set aside her expectations in a very, very profound way by setting aside her old self, yeah, and being a noob, a newbie, a beginner, a child. It's brilliant what Ursula did. Absolutely brilliant from a psychology point of view. Fantastic, right? Really awesome. But this is difficult for most to do because they can't let go of their status like Camelius, right? And he can't be a nothing. He can't be a newbie. He can't be a beginner. He's too tied to himself, right? And who said freedom of self? Oh, it was in a poem that Sher wrote, right? Right? Freedom from little
Ah,
s self was like the core part of a thing. So this is what Camelius does not have, but what Ursula recognized as what was needed: freedom from little s self, right? And this allows her to hear as new. Anyway, most new nobles do not stay on Nobelia, as wonderful as it is. Seldom a matter of choice. Their personal flow, as it connects to the greater flow via anomalies, inevitably leads most new nobles off planet. A major part of being a new noble is being able to interact with any situation or any person, anywhere, in any circumstance. That is the appropriateness we seek, not just with people, but any situation, obviously, right? Any alien, anything, right? But yeah, well, she does say any situation or any person, right? Or in any, I said, this is the appropriateness we seek. A major part of our learning to be a new noble centers on this. She's coming to a point which I'm not quite sure yet what it is, so I'll have to just continue to see. It's a mystery to me right now. Biella pointed to Illumina. Those who are new nobles in the technical sense are those who have desired with all their being to learn and grow in a personal way. Those who aspire to be noble, to be in the most complete and fullest sense of the word. Those who wish to make the great effort involved in doing this. They are those who happily engage in the discipline and patience and the forbearance required to align their personal timing within the greater flow of things. I'm still not sure what she's going here, where she's going with this, but we'll find out in a moment. I just wanted to make a adjustment here. Uh, Biella pointed to Illumina. I, uh, right, Bina? Are you
yes.
looking at screen or not?
Yes.
I said, Biella pointed to Illumina, including the aspirants in her gesture. She's pointing at Illumina, but by implication, when you point at somebody and you can extend your movement of your hand to also include the aspirants, right? But she's using Illumina as the example, but she could just as well be applying it to any of the aspirants, right? The reason I added that in there is because I just thought Biella wouldn't only point to Illumina. She would, in that gesture, it would automatically also include the aspirants. That just would be innate to know, because inclusivity, it's a capital I term. It's very important, right? And it's taken for granted by me that I didn't write it in, but now that's why I put it in there. right? Including the aspirants in her gesture, right? So those are where we're now, right? Right. And align their personal timing with that greater flow of things, right? When we were talking about timing this morning, Biella and I were doing, Beena and I were doing a capital R reading of Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings, right? And yes, it's a book concerning sword fighting, but if you take the sword fighting part and you just abstract the things, like he's talking about timing, right? Now, for him, he does make it very specific to sword fighting timing, but he also has some broader generalized concepts. And it led to us coming to nice definitions of timing. Is timing very important, like this, right? Well, anyway, uh, so it's just kind of fun that timing comes into it now as well, right? The path of a new noble is not an easy path, capital P path. It is a lifelong path requiring complete dedication and immersion. The path of the new nobility is extremely difficult to undertake while having other responsibilities, motivations, or passions. Everyone in the universe, no matter who, is called different. Each path is unique to the individual. Biella again indicated Illumina. Most paths involve doing of some kind: music, building, design, medicine, gaming, sports, and a myriad other paths. All mostly involve doing. The path of the new nobility is about being. In that, it is very, very different. A path which requires full-time being. It's very significant. I'm trying to remember what it is that prompted her to start on this, right?
Mhm.
Ah, she's elaborating on showing. Yes. She says, I was thinking about this, and this is the morning theme. She's tying it all together now, right? And why this is so important in the greater context. But just to go a little bit on a side journey here. So she starts to say, the showing leads me to courses of action I wouldn't normally engage in. And then she elaborates on what showing is to a new noble. It involves being, yes, right? A path which requires full-time being. That is how the school of nobility came into being. It to provide a place where those with this path could pursue their passion with complete focus. This is long before the various schools were consolidated on nobilia. As new nobles, we have one desire: to be as appropriately as possible in the universal context. Wow, 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 wow. Seems simple enough. Yeah. I'm actually going to take that as a quote. I should have done this when we started the capital R reading, but oh well, it is what it is. Right, Veena? To pull these quotes.
Yes.
But I mean, but again, we can do that another time when we go through it, right? Seems simple enough, but it ends up being the exact opposite. Being in the most appropriate way entails being a part of the greater flow, being attuned to it. Put another way, we become cogs in the great machine, fluid, flexible, adaptable cogs, fitting in and partaking in many different ways. One could say that the new nobility are mechanisms of appropriateness. Wow, very cool. It is why our mandate is simply to be, uh, promote being. This way we are free to be as circumstances require, which brings me back to going off-world. Right now she's going to start tying it all together. New nobles are often approached in the way I was with Boynal. See, here's the connectivity now coming back, right? And she's bringing this not only to make this point clear to the delegates that, the new nobility aren't just about living on Nobelia. The majority live off planet, right? Live elsewhere in the agglomeration, right? So now she's bringing this to show them what it is to be a new noble means not just to live on Nobelia as one would imagine, right? But no, the bulk don't, right? So it's very, very unconventional, kind of opposite in a way. But also, how do, when they are off world, they are looking to deal with things appropriately, right? So new nobles are often approached in the way I was with Boynal. We often find ourselves in the right place at the right time. Many come to the new nobles specifically seeing them as counselors or along those lines. Now, I think if I remember when I read this before, there's a bit that needs to be clarified here. We'll see now. To connect back to the theme of the day, which is where I'm heading. Any interaction a new noble undertakes is always as a consequence of an anomaly. Every interaction. Okay, so this needs to
Oh,
be what I mean here, right? And now that's why I reread this and why this is still, not finished yet. There's still some editing to be done. That capitalized and emphasized interaction makes all the big difference here, right? Because she's going to differentiate between a little I interaction and a capital I interaction in a moment, right? Any interaction, capital I interaction. I think I'm actually going to say this. Yeah, I mean capital.
yes.
Capital. Well, this thing with the audiobook and me doing the audiobook has made me look at my writing in a different way. Because even though interaction may be emphasized by the reader, yeah, well, and that virtual voices thing, it's fine for the nonfiction. It's not going to be appropriate for this, uh, you know, but they don't emphasize very well, or if at all. Yeah. So to say capital I interaction, whether this is now emphasized or not, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's now being differentiated by saying capital I. Any capital I interaction a new noble undertakes is always as a consequence of an anomaly or the undeniable flow of things. Their interactions are always dictated by force of circumstance, right? All right, I want to emphasize always because anomaly is force of circumstance, so the same thing. Which is an anomaly is a force of circumstance, right? But there's also a force of circumstance that doesn't involve specifically an anomaly, right? So, okay, that's why I don't want to emphasize there. Mostly, a new noble will direct someone like that to the appropriate place or person. Yeah. Now, that's the part that was confusing,
Yes.
right? Because the person that they are saying, new nobles are often approached the way I was with Boynal, right? We often find ourselves, right? Many new nobles would direct someone like that to the appropriate place or person, uh, comma, new line, when they are not singled out by anomaly, right? From a purely grammatical point of view, yes, uh, uh, not like that, because the like that applies to Boynal, but it actually, well, technically, really, Beena, many come to the new nobles, specifically seeing them as councils, and that's the that who she's referring to here, right? Right, to the
Yes.
someone who comes to them as councils will direct someone uh, seeking. All right, there we go. Right, now it's more clear. Yes, right. Let's go
Yes.
back here a little bit. Um, Many come to the new nobles, specifically seeing them as counselors or along those lines. To connect back to the theme of the day, which is where I'm heading, any capital I interaction a new noble undertakes is always as a consequence of an anomaly or the undeniable flow of things. Their interactions are always dictated by force of circumstance. Mostly, a new noble will direct someone seeking typical counsel to the appropriate place or person when they are not singled out by anomaly. See, now it's very clear, yeah, right? It was a bit unclear for me when I read it through that, we're talking about people like Boynal, and yet you're saying, yeah, but they'll direct him to somebody else. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't clear, right? But often a new noble is called
Yes.
by anomalies to share themselves, to share what it is that they are, how it is that they are, right? Right? To share, right? Capital R, S, share, yes? Uh, I think I'll put this in italics here as well. To share what it is they are, how it is they are. This connects us back to anomalies. Most of what the new nobility are, what they stand for, what they believe, what they use, are extensions of what most people know. Communication is usually an elaboration, an extrapolation, a refinement, a focusing, or a bringing into awareness of something others are already more or less familiar with, to greater or lesser degrees. Anomalies are an exception. They are not part of most people's everyday life. Well, for instance, she just used communication there as an example, right? But what about
Mhm.
patience, kindness, caring, consideration? These are all nobleness. People act nobly sometimes, but the new nobility take it all the way, right? So I'm just not
Yes.
occasionally be new noble. I want to always be noble, not be noble, right? So they are the people in everyday life, they are noble on a regular basis, right? Or occasionally, that depends, but it's not always, right? So they take this as an extension, as an expansion of what is normally there. But she's making the point that anomalies don't fit into this, right? Anomalies are an exception. They are not part of most people's everyday life, not as a tool for living. Now you could say, well, okay, nobility might also not necessarily be, yeah, but to some extent it is, because we all know this word, so it's somewhere there. Not as a tool for living, not as an everyday tool for living deliberately, yeah, not as a means of connecting, and certainly not as a central theme in their lives, one which takes on a pivotal role in everything they do. This is tantamount to living the opposite way to how most live. Now she's making a really crucial point here, right? Again, her theme of the day is anomalies. So in this, she first shares about going off planet, and then she's bringing the fact that, well, what the new nobility do on the whole is to take what most people do, but just take it to the end, to extremes, to take it all the way to the end, right? To be thorough in it and so on. But except when it comes to anomalies, this is very different. So now she is further showing and explaining and elaborating on anomalies within this context, right? And in this, she's also making it more clear what anomalies are, because it's a theme of the day. So she's bringing anomalies in, right? Because she's been mandated by the universe today to elucidate, to expound, to elaborate on anomalies. Yes? So you see what I mean? In the bigger context, how she's fulfilling, responding, but also
Yes.
being proactive. Right? Anomalies are an exception. They are not part of most people's life. Not as a tool for living, not as an everyday tool for living deliberately. Yeah, I think I must take those out there. It changes the emphasis. Not as an everyday
Yes.
tool for living deliberately, not as a means of connecting, and certainly not as a central theme in their lives. Yes, there are people who say, oh, I got an omen, but it's not a central theme in their lives. This is tantamount to living the opposite way to how most live. And I think opposite must be emphasized. Biella addressed the delegates more directly. I'm assuming it is fair to say, for most people, their actions are as a result of their internal thoughts, motivations, goals, attitudes, and even moods. She received affirming nods. Now, even though you might say, yeah, but most people's actions are not as a result of their internal thoughts, but because of what they get told by their boss or their parents to do. Yeah. But when you think about it, they still have to think and agree that what the boss says or the parent says is something they're going to do. They might not like it, but they're still thinking, and they have that discussion very often, especially as children. Well, I really don't want to do this, but if I don't do this, then I'm going to get into trouble. Ugh, this sucks, but I have to do it. Same thing with your boss. You still deciding to do it. There are times when people say, no, the suck is not, is too much. Sorry, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to object, reject, refuse, right? Maybe run away or whatever, quit my job, right? Or at least make the decision to change your job because you say, man, I don't want to be doing this on a daily basis to do things that I don't really agree with. My point is there's thinking about it, right? Even if you go along with what they say, you're still thinking and you're still making that choice to go along with what they say, right? I mean, as children, you always knew you had the option to run away, right? Yet you didn't.
Yes.
You always knew you had that
Yes.
option. And the fact that you knew that was
Yes.
an option and you didn't exercise that option means you were choosing. Yeah, and you were thinking about it that led to the choice. Now, you might not be aware that you were thinking about it, which is typically the case, but nonetheless, end result, you were still living according to your internal thoughts, right? So this is very important what Biella says here. Biella addressed the delegates more directly. I'm assuming it is fair to say, for most people, their actions are a result of their internal thoughts, motivations, goals, attitudes, and even moods, right? So she's saying there's a lot of things that motivate you, but they're all coming from internal, not just thoughts, but also your motivations, your goals, your attitudes, your moods, everything, right? She received affirming nods. But this is not so for the new nobility. Again, not must be emphasized. It's not such a strong emphasis here, but still. But this is not so for the new nobility. They take their direction from outside of themselves, from the greater flow, from the world, from the universe, from their greater selves, however one wishes to frame it, from God, from Allah, Buddha, Krishna, right? The sun, the fairy queen, doesn't matter. Yeah. And so very interesting that in the current fictional book series that I'm listening to about a wizard, the Dresden Files. It's a long series, a very cool series about this wizard who's a wizard for hire, and he's got an office in Chicago, right, like in modern times. And anyway, when there are two fairy queens, not just one. There's the summer fairy queen and the winter one, and they but at odds with each other, and he's kind of involved with the fairy queens. A lot of drama involving them now. So just interesting because I always use this fairy queen when people make quotes, like in the group, and they make a quote that involves God. And I say, well, sometimes I said, and I do it regularly. Say, well, just if you were to replace, like, please don't put the God in there because it doesn't actually matter. Because if you replace God with a fairy queen, the point of your post remains the same, right? Okay, God wants you to be patient. Fairy queen wants you to be patient. Has the same value. But when you put God in there, it now is kind of a propaganda that you must do this because God wants it. So now you're starting to get into the religion and all. And you also, by continually saying God, you are making out as if this is, or you're implying, you're cueing that, well, God is the only option. Right? So it's an inadvertent preaching. But when you realize that you can replace God with fairy queen in most things that you see on the internet that have God in them, it really kind of changes that, well, your belief was so important to you, but if the things that you are preaching have the same exact value, whether it's fairy queen or God, wow, this is kind of mind blowing. Yes. And it makes one really look at your beliefs. The belief isn't valid because of where it comes from. It has validity because of its inherent internal sensibility. And this is very hard. We've been thoroughly indoctrinated. It's probably in our DNA from centuries of being peasants, of having obedience, obedience, obedience. That value comes from authority. That's the only place value comes from, right? So we have to be very careful of this, not to fall into that trap. That no, value comes because it's inherently sensible. Yeah, that's where value comes from, not from the origin. Right? Very important. Anyway, so this is just going on a somewhat of a side tangent, yeah, but very, very important, right? As just when I mentioned this, which says, or however you wish to frame it, and I often put it in, or random, like a capitalized random, like I'm calling my deity is called random. Right? You've got Buddha, Allah, Krishna, random, fairy queen, random is in there. We say random wants you to have patience. Random wants you to be kind. Changes, right? So it totally makes this point of naming the source of authority to elevate the importance of your statement makes it irrelevant. Right? And it shows it up for what it is, that you are saying this. Now, anyone who says God wants this, how do you know? Yeah, important point. Doesn't mean you can't know, but how do you know? You just kind of assume so. And, they say it because it adds importance to what they're saying. They don't have any clue, right? But this is not so for the new nobility. They take their direction from outside of themselves, from the greater flow, from the world, from the universe, from their greater selves. However one wishes to frame it, regardless, it amounts to the same thing for the new nobles. Let me elaborate on something here a little bit. Yeah. You may say, yeah, but Syl, you just said a moment ago, how do you know what God wants, or Allah, or Buddha, or Krishna? Isn't this what? Biella saying when they take it from outside of themselves, they say, I know what the greater flow wants me to do. I know what the world wants me to do. I know what the universe wants me to do. I know what my greater self wants me to do. How? How do you know this? If you were to push or ask this of, if somebody asked this of Biella there, she says, what I am saying is that I have decided and interpreted this as the intent of the communication. I have decided. I'm not saying it is the intent. I am saying this is my interpretation of the intent. Very big difference, right? So they don't assume they know. What they assume or take, or not assume even, but what they act on is their interpretation of what they're coming. And they would say to you, I know full well I may be completely and utterly wrong, which is where my impeccability comes in, because I'm going to make every effort I possibly can to minimize the chances of me being and misunderstanding this interpretation, right? So I'm going to be thorough and scrupulous and conscientious and diligent and all of the other things involved in understanding this anomaly, so that when I act, I know I may be getting it wrong, but at least I will not have any regrets on my actions, right? And I cut down to a minimum my chances of being mistaken. And if it happens, well, that's fortuitous mistake. And I know if I've been impeccable, you get fortuitous mistakes. So they don't assume ever that they know what the greater flow, the world, the universe, their greater selves, or any deity is trying to say. They never say, oh, right, this is what the universe says. No, no. It may creep into their expression somewhat as convenience, but underlying, it's always they are talking about their personal interpretation. For me, it means this, not it does mean this, right? So that's why with anomalies, they say it's always personal. For me, this communication from outside means this. I'm not saying it does mean this. I'm saying for me, it means this, right? A massive, massive distinction that I have to emphasize excruciatingly much, right? For me, it means this is radically different to saying it means this, even though the communication may be personally directed to me and I'm the only one that can say what it means. Still, I don't have that arrogance and my humility and my sobriety. Never mind my humility, my sobriety forces me to say for me, because I know I might make a mistake here. I might get it wrong, right? So very, very important distinction. If you're paying attention clearly here, you could say, yeah, but Biella, you're contradicting yourself. All right, she's not elaborating on this. It's come about elsewhere, but doesn't matter. They take their direction exclusively from outside of themselves. They do this via anomalies, via force of circumstance. Explaining this is extremely difficult. To tie it all together, since it is our theme of the day. Now, when she says here, explaining this is very difficult. Biella is an excellent illuminator, elucidator, right? She's very excellent at explaining. But even she knows this is explaining this is extremely difficult, not necessarily because of her, but because of the ear. When your ear is so absolutely habituated to hearing the usual, it becomes very, very difficult, yes, to for somebody to hear what is so completely outside of their paradigm and their expectations, right? So the explaining is difficult. She's being very capital D diplomatic here, right? In saying it's difficult. She's sort of implying that it's difficult to explain, but when you explain, there is the reception. She's not saying when you explain, the receptivity affects the explanation, right? It's part of it. It's implied, but that's the fullness of what she's saying. Somebody said, what do you mean exactly? I mean, I think you're an excellent explainer, right? How is it that you're having a problem? Well, it's difficult to succeed in your explanation, right? Because you have these limitations of reception through habituation, through expectation, through non-comprehension, through things being so utterly preposterous, right? Like this, taking direction exclusively from outside of themselves. It is preposterous to the average individual. It's unthinkable. To a BMN, you can just forget about it. This is like they would laugh and they would think this is hysterically funny and ridiculous and absurd. They would scoff at it, mock at it, and just totally say this is like the biggest load of nonsense under the sun, right? Totally goes against everything that they stand for, right? To tie it all together, since it's our theme of the day, and as manifested in the conversation with Boynal, he hasn't gotten it, as he would probably say. Right? As he would probably say. It's very important. She's aware that, yes, he's come to her with something, and the universe has dictated anomalies as the theme of the day, which means, right, also, if she understands it correctly, that sharing with anomalies, not only did it come up in Boynal's own discussion, right, as appropriate, but it has made it appropriate for her to introduce into the conversation with Boynal, which normally she might not, because it's kind of a telling and it's kind of a giving of advice. But because the theme of the day, and there were some hints towards anomalies in what he said, that she could not bring this into the conversation, right? Very important. But now she's with a second dilemma. First is that she's bringing something into the conversation she might not ordinarily bring in, right? Because, well, it depends on what is the appropriateness of the conversation. Like, I mean, he's not asking for advice and for her to bring in a new thing. Not that she can't, but it makes it a bit more tricky. But she could introduce it, sure, as a sharing, just as a bonus information. But she can't press a bit on it. But in the case of Boynal, because he hasn't gotten it and the whole nature of everything, she has to do something that she would not ordinarily do. And this is push a bit on the anomalies, right? So the theme of the day and the greater connectivity, when you now tie it all together, I see where you're going, right? This is an unusual interaction. It's coming from, and the outside of me is affecting the typical interaction that I have with Boynal, or might have, right? So this is how they live, right? There's a moreness to it. So she can do something which sort of is different to her typical sobriety and sensibility, like in the case of not telling somebody or not offering advice, yeah? Unasked for advice, at least. Biella gestured to the aspirants. If you end up off-world in situations similar to this, you too will be required to bring anomalies into the conversations. It is difficult, as it requires a leap of conception. There are many implications associated with anomalies. Right? This chapter, I don't know why I missed on so much of my capitalization. Right? So this is a very big deal. Now, again, see, her mandate as a new noble is to share with the other new nobles. But sharing with aspirants, of course, is also part of her mandate. And the sharing with aspirants is slightly different. With aspirants, she has license to bring into awareness that which isn't necessarily part of the conversation, right? To basically be preemptive. Because by the greater implication, their intent is to know that more that they are not aware of. Yes. So it's totally within the mandate of being a new noble to bring moreness, that which is not, extra, like in this case, not necessarily mandated by the conversation, but you can do it with the aspirants, right? Well, it's a kind of a teaching, but it's a teaching by a sharing, by the introduction of moreness, by elucidating on that which is as yet outside of their awareness. And they love it. I mean, this is just fantastic. I mean, look at our interactions, Beena, how me and you both, we love it when there is a moreness of awareness that comes to us. Yes. It's the great joy that we engage in every single day. Right, Beena? Oh, maybe I'm not right. Maybe Beena doesn't agree. Beena's not there.
No,
Oh, okay.
no, no.
It's huge, right? That joy of discovery, that joy of connecting, that joy of awareness, like you said, that connectivity, right? And becoming aware of what you didn't know before. This is an incredible joy. Yes. Sadly, people see becoming aware of what they didn't know before as a non-joy. Why? Because it makes them feel less. Oh, I didn't know it before. I must be stupid. Oh, what a waste! What a waste! What a waste! What a terrible waste. Yeah, it's a horrible
Yes.
thing. It's really sad. Really sad. Anyway, it's just how life is, right? Oh, Let's see if there are comments. Where are the comments? Oh, Matt came and said, put a love on this. Hey, Matt. Hello, hello, hello. Very important point here. This about communication and introducing and having license to introduce things. I don't know if you're staying, Matt. If you are, leave a comment. I don't know where all the comments from Norma went to. Well, do you see them still, Rena?
No.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to them. They're all gone. Huh. Anyway, hey Matt, good to see you here, mate. Good to see you. Say something. Say something. Say something. I like to make my commentary pertinent and relevant, right? So if somebody says something, I can connect it to that. Very helpful. Right. So where we are. If you're off-world in situations similar to this, you too will be required to bring anomalies into the conversations. It is difficult as it requires a leap of conception. There are many, many implications associated with anomalies, right? And since Matt is now, well, he clicked a love there. I don't know if he's still here or not, but in the forum of Matt's lives that he did, right? And in that context, that is a particular context in which anomalies are very difficult to talk about and share because the environment doesn't really lend to it, right? And the things are more on the typical day-to-day stuff. And so anomalies, because they are so outside of the usual, outside of the typical, that in order for me to talk about anomalies, I basically have to do what I'm doing now, which would mean that I would take up all the time just me explaining this, the full hour or 2 hours or however long the things are. So it makes it inappropriate to explain and to talk about. I can't even introduce it because if somebody says, "What do you mean by anomalies?" Well, now I've got an hour-long explanation. You see, so I can't easily talk about it in a situation like that, right? So thank you, Matt. You made me bring that up as an example. Few can undertake an activity as a pure test. Biella jumps slightly here, whether they believe or not. They need those implications to be connected, to be filled out. It becomes tricky, since a new noble always, always, always only shares, never anything else. It is central to the new nobility that we come to awareness by ourselves. Why sharing is such a key. And again, Matt, if you're listening, this is something that's hard for many of your listeners to recognize. They expect telling, and many life coaches think this is their job to tell. I mean, you see it in group. Every second post, all the posts, 99% of the posts are about people telling, because this is what they think they should do. From the new nobility point of view, no, absolutely not. In capital H hearing in the program, I go into detail about why this is detrimental, why it's not a good idea, what are the downsides to it, the negatives to it, many, many, many reasons. And from the entire new nobility culture, it's why they come to sharing from a deep ethical point of view. And the nobility of it and the moreness of it is you cannot go around telling because you are depriving people of coming to awareness by themselves, right? So this is a big deal. It's why they share, right? It's really huge. So now we can put all the pieces in play. But the individual, she's continuing where she said, right? Not about the bigger conversation, but when it comes to a conversation in sharing, we can put all the places in play via sharing by implication. But the individual has to assemble those ingredients for themselves. Now, she's still on the topic of anomalies, by the way. You're going to see how it comes now in a moment. To do so on their behalf is the greatest disservice anyone can do to another, right? That's robbing them of the opportunity to learn for themselves. They may have full comprehension, but they will never know if they could have worked it out for themselves. The knowledge that we can is vital, right? Because now this is where your self-trust comes from. Yes, I understand what you say. You guru who's telling me what I need to know. I get it. I comprehend. I get it. But could I have figured this out for myself? I'll never know. Thus, I don't know if I'm dependent on you or not. What a terrible thing. And the more you do this, the more you get habituated to receiving this, right, and understanding and comprehending. And the less you practice figuring it out for yourself, eventually, even though you might have had the ability, you've lost it because you never practice it. Terrible. See the disservice of telling? Horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And I know some people might watch this and listen to this and hear what I'm saying as if I'm telling. Uh, no, if you listen carefully, you'll see it's not so. Your expectations will make you hear it as telling, but it's not. Me being emphatic, me being earnest, me being sincere, me having energy in what I'm doing doesn't mean I'm telling. That usually is associated with telling, but I'm sharing in a way. Why am I being emphatic and everything? Because it's important to me. It's important to me. And I feel it's an important understanding in general, yes, but I'm not telling you that it must be important to you. No, never, 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 ever, ever. I can say objectively, I think this is an important, like I can say objectively, I think patience is a good quality to have. This is just like a self-evident thing. Right? I'm not telling you you must have patience. I'm just saying it's a valuable quality to have. Well, if you don't agree with me, please show me how it's not so, and then I'll make an exception to it. But it's a self-evident sensibility, and sharing that, so sharing self-evident sensibility is very different to telling. Yes, right? I'm not saying you must have patience. I'm saying patience is a good quality to have, self-evident, right? It's a cadeau. Right? I'm just sharing a duh. As will say the sky is blue, same thing, right? Right. The knowledge that we can is vital. Besides, it is only when we conclude for ourselves that the knowledge is ours. And this is another deep understanding. It's inherent in way of impeccability, right? Impeccability is not sharing a set of beliefs, not at all, right? Beena, are you seeing any comments there by you? I want to make sure that Matt hasn't commented. I don't know why all of Norma's comments are just gone now.
No.
Well, I don't know what's happened there. So I don't want to make sure I've not missed anything.
Oh,
If
same here.
what's that?
No comments.
Will you make a comment, please, so that I can see if maybe just I don't know what happened to Norma's comments, but I want to
Okay,
just make sure that the commenting, just say hello.
okay, I'm just saying that from your thing, so that's why. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. No, well, all right, okay, that doesn't really help, but all right, maybe. Okay, never mind. Okay. Either way, tell me when you made the comment.
I did.
Oh, see, I'm not seeing it yet. Let me refresh and see. Oh, very peculiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see my hello there. So comments can show. Okay, I don't know what happened to Norma's though. That's very weird. Yeah, maybe she deleted them for some reason. I don't know. Still doesn't make sense. Anyway, well, Matt, if you are, and I'm not seeing them, send them to me in Messenger, just in case you're still here. Well, maybe Matt just saw it on his timeline and clicked love and went on. I don't know. I'm hoping you're still here, Matt. It'd be nice to have you respond and chat. It'd be very cool. You're always welcome to come and join me on Zoom and chat about the stuff, right? Capital E discussions are always open to everybody. That's why I call these opens, or at least Norma started this. But yeah, I think I referred to them as opens, and she picked up on that. I was saying they're open to everybody. All right. Anyway, besides, it is only when we conclude for ourselves that the knowledge is ours. So, in way of impeccability, this making it your own is a profound, 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 fundamental key power conception that underlies everything in way of impeccability. It's this understanding of learning. Most of our understanding of what learning is comes from our school, which is you get told stuff, you memorize it, and that's learning. No, 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 no. Real learning comes when you make it your own. Right? Otherwise, you just have it in your database. It never gets into your operating system, and it's not particularly utilizable. To some small extent, yes or no, but when you make it your own, that's when it is real. That's when it is power. That's when it's innate. That's when you change, not just having data on your database, but you change, right? So especially when it comes to self-change, when I'm learning, how to do a task, okay, I can do it from memory. But when I'm learning how to be from memory, doesn't make me be different, right? So being requires making it your own so that it becomes innate. It's incorporated, right? It's part of you. Yeah. So this is where the difference comes in. Very big deal, right? So we can't deprive that ability and opportunity to others, right? Even inadvertently, you might not directly be doing it, but inadvertently. Biella fetched herself a drink of water and continued. Our theme of the day is manifesting in all sorts of ways and connecting all sorts of things. I have been keen to illustrate about the anomalies, to have it be a part of our discussions. Today we are getting a surplus. Biella smiled joyfully. Anomalies were so amazing, such magic. The calm drew her attention. A reply from Boynal. Now, again, well, we'll come here tomorrow. That's a perfect transition point, right? Um, that she has this reply from Boynal. Yes. This is very cool. And I'll put it here so in case I scroll, I know where it is, where I had to pick up. So very, very cool. That Biella has been keen to bring anomalies into the discussion before, or at least with the delegates, but she hasn't had the opportunity. And today she's getting a surplus, right? And it's very critical because how can she show what the new nobility are and what it is to be a new noble without bringing this most crucial, fundamental aspect of them, right? I mean, because it's very easy to have all the rest, right? Nobility and awareness and discipline and impeccability and thoroughness and patience and kindness and consideration, capital diplomacy, all of that could give you an idea of the new nobles, yeah, which would be valid but not complete. Yes. It actually be way more incomplete if you just take it on a number basis, right? So take all those concepts, take the dictionary of power. Yes. And let's say you got 100 concepts in the dictionary of power. Yes. And that will give you an idea of what the new nobility are, right? However, when you add anomalies, right, that 101, you're adding 1% more, but that 1% changes your entire perception of the new nobility. Yeah, it's not a 1% extra addition. Oh, I understand one more little thing to them. Okay, they're also into this. No, that changes everything, right? It's a flavoring that's like when you add a little bit of salt to your soup, it's either slightly more or slightly less salty. It does not make a difference. But and again, some things don't really change the dish, but others do. Like you could add some very strong flavoring or herb, or let's say you put lemon juice in there, and well, you don't have a faint taste of lemon, but it curdles the dish. See, it has that transformative effect. Anomalies is like lemon that curdles your dish. Yeah, it's transformative. All right, curdling might be the bad example here because that's a negative thing. Well, maybe not unless you want curdling. But you see my point though, right? So without anomalies, you are not only getting an incomplete picture, but you're getting a picture that is absolutely not representative. But the danger of it is that it can easily be seen as representative, right? So without anomalies, you're going to get the picture of the new nobility that, yes, it is accurate, but it is also grossly inaccurate at the same time. Yeah. The anomalies make all the difference. And it is anomalies which makes them primarily a fundamentally, profoundly spiritual society. Yeah. Because they're connected to moreness. And moreness, when like you were saying earlier today in our discussion, you don't really care for this word spirituality. Neither did I. Well, I don't care for spiritual, but spirituality is more open, it's more broad. Spiritual, that's I'm a spiritual person. I have no idea what this means, right? But when I say, yes, spirituality, at least because it's vague and indefinite, is important to me because, well, to me, okay, why is it important? Because spirituality to me is moreness. I pursue moreness. Included in moreness is not only the moreness of enhanced and developed awareness, but the moreness of that which is not part of our regular world, right? The moreness of like direct perception of energy, for instance, and the moreness of the intent of the universe, which is, to me, that universe has an intent, that underlying energy that, that Einstein says 90% of the universe is energy. To me, that energy has an intent. Yeah. And the way that intent connects to us is via spirit. So you can call spirit the connecting link. You can call spirit, I don't know, the fiber optics of the universe, maybe. doesn't matter, right? But it's big, it's called spirit because it doesn't have a concrete reality. But when we understand spirit to be this communication link, right? The communication or connecting, we connect to the greaterness via spirit. Like when you say somebody has a good spirit, right? You're not saying they are this way. It's a part of them that influences the whole. Yeah. So spirit likewise is a something that makes a difference. Yeah. So when we start to think a bit more about it, it starts to fall into place. Very powerful stuff here. Powerful. But now we're going to come to this other anomaly. So very cool. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. I like it that people came by and, left a little love. At least I knew they were there. It makes me feel a bit connected to them. I don't know Seamus. I wish Seamus would connect and say hello and everything. But yeah, so be it. It's just how things are. Yeah. Right, Beena?
Yes. Yeah.
Moreness. Any comments on anything that I said that connected, resonated, um, brought the thought up in
Everything,
you?
everything actually, and I'm actually practicing more of capital theory nowadays.
I know, I
Uh,
know.
I want to absorb more, and not because that okay, you are saying this first time, because a lot of things are new about anomalies. But
Yeah,
also
yeah,
about that, that I have been disconnected with that. So I just don't want to lose this disability and this capacity or a skill. I have, okay, I was in the process of acquiring it, and then it was a disconnect, and then now I'm just going
yeah,
back to that also. Okay. So yes.
yeah,
So I do have feedbacks. All my sharings, by the way, like okay, even just my thought of the day or my writing and everything is a reflection or my takeaways of what I've been listening to and hearing. So this is what actually sometimes it doesn't feel like or seem like that. Okay, yes, okay, I was writing about some astrology stuff, but it's still it is coming from the understanding of all these things and
yeah,
principles. Thought of the day, okay, yes, it comes out spontaneously always, but it is coming via the understanding and the awareness I'm having from the
All right, say
thoughts.
the last sentence again, please. Sorry, I was yawning, so I couldn't hear you there. Say again.
I was saying that, okay, even my thoughts of the day, they come spontaneously, okay, all the time, but they
Exactly.
are coming with the understanding and the awareness.
Yes.
Yes, the choice of the words and the topic, it just come in right in that
Yeah.
second. When
Yeah.
I said hello, even then I don't know, I don't care what I'm going to say. And then suddenly it just all started. And I'm enjoying
Yeah.
it. Why I'm doing it? Because I'm getting value out of it.
Oh
Like, okay,
yeah. Oh yeah. Me
talking
too.
about
Me
this, and
too.
then okay, I'm realizing the profoundness of this
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I get
why it
tremendous
is
value. Yeah.
and why it is coming, why it is happening with me. Because when in the beginning, when Syl was saying that, okay, oh, make it your own, and then you will not be quiet. Okay, if I'm not prepared, it's like a very duh quote.
Yeah.
I just said it for myself that okay, if I need to prepare, I'm not prepared yet. Read it again. Because if I have to
Yeah.
prepare, then it's not
Yeah. Yeah.
it has to be innate to me every single time. If I need to talk about something, it needs to be innate. It needs to come out. Then I
Correct.
can say that this
Correct.
is what
Correct.
I know. This is what I understand. This is what I apply. Then I can talk about it without any preparation, like right now. So that is something I'm practicing because I was missing that capital cheering. I'm really hoping for that we will have some wonderful participants again because we are open to
Yeah.
that. But because I want to do my practice again.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like a,
Yeah.
it's like a,
Yeah. Right
it's
now, I don't have. I have a couple. Um, but they're not
yes.
doing it more loosely. They're not so like every week coming and all that. Um, but I don't really have that much space. I maybe have space for one or two at the moment.
I know,
Who will
I
come and
know,
do it
I
full time. Yeah.
yes,
So
I know.
just as appropriate. Yeah, as appropriate. It takes a lot, right? In way of
Oh,
impeccability is takes a tremendous amount. From me, I mean, well, okay, Beena is joining me then also from her, but it's a lot on me in terms of the extra elucidation and just paying attention to somebody, just listening to somebody with capital H hearing requires a lot of energy when you do it in that way, right? The way Biella was doing it to Boynal, right? And she had the luxury of having a bit of time in between. When it's live, it's more intense, right? Because stuff comes faster. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy, and making space takes energy. I don't think people really realize how much. It's a profoundness, right? And ending up being heard, and then also connecting things to make it pertinent and relevant, and all of the other skills that things that were coming into this. It's absolutely heightened and exponentially so in the case of where somebody's a participant rather than just a random conversation, right? Because now there's an onus on me, yeah, to provide what is being sought, which is life change and self change, but to do it in such a way that you are enabling the individual to do it themselves, right? Not just having this artificial external thing that they are following and living your idea of how they should live. No, no. So to do it where they are going against what they do, their habits and stuff, man, this requires lots of skill, lots of attention, lots of energy. Just by the way. Yeah, not a simple thing. Not a simple thing. Yeah. Uh, yeah. It's a very peculiar setup. This to present a course in which you have participants and you are the presenter. Right? It puts a lot on one. The responsibility is inordinate. Yeah. I mean, when I do this, the participants never leave my awareness. They're with me all the time. I don't just connect with you, during the 4 hours a week, 2 and 2. I know you're there all the time. Yeah. So it requires a lot. Requires a lot. All right. On that note, Beena, I think we end here, right?
Yes.
Are you going to come back or not?
Yes.
Are you going to go sleep or are you going to come back?
I'm going to come back. Yes,
Okay.
for a few minutes, I feel.
Okay. Okay. I'll
I will-
speak to you on the phone then. All right. Bye-bye, sweetness. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for saying hello, even if it's via our love. Still means a lot. All right. End
Yes.
meeting. End meeting for all.